The Becoming Flame podcast broadcasts pure, unfiltered power exchange that stokes the flame of your being. Because it's time to remember. It's time to return. It's time to become flame. It is such a potent time on the planet at the moment for women to take this next period of time in the lead up to a new year, to a new energetic numerology, to a new Chinese and Vedic mythology and energy. But most importantly, at this precipice of a new era, of a new set of possibility. And while the world looks like it's in chaos and really feels that way too, there's also this deeper sense of calm on the horizon. This deeper sense of energetic clarity that there is a completion cycle. There is an opportunity to start anew. So 2025 was a 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5 year. That's a 9 year. That's all about completion. It's all about the ending. It's all about cleaning up this specific era of your life, of your existence, of your karmic threshold, and stepping into a new era in 2026, a 1 year that is all about new beginnings, about planting of new seeds, of openings, and of bloomings. It's also a horse year in the Chinese zodiac, which means not only is it going to be an era of newness and of, commencing again, one that we've never done before, very avant-garde, very, rebellious and unique, and a way to go forward in our own way. But it's a horse year in terms of the speed at which that's going to go. And so 2026 is not a year of new, slow mornings of rising and just getting used to it, getting into a new flow. No, it's going to be this sense of like, it's new, it's changed, it's open, but it's flowing and it's gushing and it's galloping and it's going forward. And so what is the biggest opportunity for us all to start this new year, start this new energy, then deep karmic clearing of our matriarchal mother lines, that we don't want the old to be affecting us going forward. We don't want any of that which has been holding us back, holding us down, keeping us small. And so the first opportunity here right now is to feel or get a sense of any of the aspects of you that have been dimming or making ourselves small so as not to surpass or overtake our mother in any way. Where have you been keeping your income at a favorable level so as not to ruffle any feathers, so as to please those around you, so as to be the good girl, the compliant one, the obedient one, the helpful one, the one that's always there, dependable, reliable, cute piggy tails, and making your mother's life easy, palatable, and enjoyable. We are all raised to be obedient in some way. And that obedience, whether your caretakers, your mother, your parents meant this or not, but that obedience creates deep self-doubt. Because obedience is really about doing what somebody else wants and overriding your own internal dialogue of what your body needs to be doing that day, what your mind wants to be thinking that day, how you wish to be acting. Obedience is about taking the back seat in your own life to somebody else's rules, somebody else's power, somebody else's control. Now, even if your mother wasn't controlling or overbearing or overburdening, her power structure in your family dynamic was larger than yours as the child. And she knew how to drive, she knew how to go to the shop, she knew how to use the kitchen appliances, she knew how to open the fridge, she knew how to, feed you and change you and put you in and out of a bath. She was the more powerful in the dynamic between mother and child. And so obedience to her was the first power dynamic that you existed in. And because it was a love bond and a creation bond and all of these other things, the complexity of the mother relationship takes on a huge meaning. And it is very unlikely that you are listening to this without ever having done any mother wound healing, any mother wound investigation. And I think what happens when we talk about the mother wound, well, it has the word wound in it, right? So it makes you believe that that's a negative thing, that there's trauma, there's wounding, and there's healing to be done as a result of that. Even in the scenario that you had an amazing and still have an amazing relationship with your mother, there is so much that is subliminally, subconsciously directing, I think is the most neutral and clear way of saying this. It is directing your life in a particular way. It is directing your relationship with money. A lot of people always talk about the father relationship, about how you make money and exist with money. And that's valid, and we can talk about that at another time. But right now, I really want to just focus on the relationship with the mother. Your relationship with your mother is all about receiving from her, because the dynamic is set up that she is your caretaker, she is your caregiver, and you are the receiver of that. As you become older, you obviously give back. And, there's no elimination of the fact that children give their mothers immense love and joy and value and all of that. But actually what you're talking about there in that moment where an infant child is in the frequency of unconditional love, and the mother has the ability to feel the frequency of that child and receive it for herself, that's quite different. That's actually where we want to get back to. What we are then going into is that more humanitarian, humanist, I should probably say, of bidirectional relationship, bidirectional love, bidirectional existence. But in an infant state, your frequency broadcast is just what it is. You're not doing anything as a child. You just are existing. And that frequency is felt by those around you because it is so pure and it is so unvarnished, untouched at this point. And so it emanates in such a profoundly strong way that all around people can feel it. As you grow up, your connection with your innate frequency gets chipped away bit by bit. And one of the ways in which that happens is the relationship and the bond between mother and child. And that's not to say that it's a negative thing and that your mother is a terrible person. It is simply the way that life exists. The longer that you have in this 3D material reality and not in, wherever babies come from, let's not get into that conversation at the moment, then your frequency naturally has less power as you grow up, because people can still feel the joy and the connection that even toddlers and children of 5 years old have to a much grander universal existence. And as we walk through time and as we walk through the calibration and education that we have from our innate selves into our required socially constructed selves, that frequency shift obviously weakens and changes. And so in that, we have a relationship with a mother that helps us to understand and make sense of not only ourselves, but of what is expected for us in the world. Because our mother is our primary teacher, our primary socializer into the world that we live in. And we have come from generations of parenting techniques and beliefs that are actually fundamentally designed to take us out of our innate truth and our coherence with nature. And again, it's not anybody's fault, but it is undeniable that has happened. And even if you are a mother yourself and you have, let's say, perpetrated or perpetuated these beliefs and these teachings to bring your children out of connection with a greater power and coherence, then the invitation here is not necessarily to go into guilt and shame about the parenting that you gave out, but rather to think about the parenting that you received. So even if you are a mother on this podcast, you yourself had a mother or a caretaker, try to listen to the podcast as a child receiving the love so that you can give yourself an opportunity to listen to the words, to feel an experience that might be unique, and to not go into shame or regret or any kind of negative spirals that you could paint yourself as a bad mother, because that is not the purpose of what we're talking about today in any way. This is about releasing the constraints and limitations that we've all grown up in, consciously or unconsciously, that we can now bring conscious awareness to release ourselves from those binds and limitations and walk into this next year, into this next chapter of our lives, into this moment in time, wherever you're listening to this podcast in the future. And if you're very, very talented in the past, and release yourself from those bindings. So let's get back into what I was saying. You are in an innate season of receivership as an infant and as a child. And there's no loaded definition onto that. There's nothing that makes you as an infant child second guess whether you should just be receiving and receiving and receiving all this nurturing from your mother. So your innate capacity to receive is biological. It's innate. It's normal. And yet, as we grow older and we move away from our innate biology or our construction of an aspect of this universal tapestry of creation, and we become more individualized or independent from that as we grow older and as we move forward in time, our ability to receive diminishes because our layering of what receivership means, what it might entangle us in, what we might have to do for it, all of these different layers and complexities emerge. And that is via originally the meaning that we as children or as young adults place on the meaning that we have, or the interactions that we have, or the deductions that we make, erroneously or not, via the relationship with our primary giver as primary receiver. So that means our mother is our primary giver and we are the primary receiver of our mother. And in a society where mothering is not honored, mothering is not supported, mothering is really hard and depleting and isolating and unsupported and uncelebrated in almost every aspect, you are going to encounter a woman who is mothering to the best of her ability in a completely depleted state, at least one moment of her life. Now, I'm not saying that every day it has to be that way, but for a lot of women, it is very depletive, very taxing, and it is the concept of giving from an empty cup every single day. Never getting enough sleep, never getting enough nourishment, never getting enough hydration, and then waking up and doing it all over again. Now, in the family unit, she may or may not receive some kind of support, but in the greater population of the Western world that she lives in, I'm speaking in English, so I assume that you have some kind of understanding of a Western world based on this demographic that we tend to cater to. But I also spent a lot of time in Asia myself, and there are ways that we could have conversations that are not Western-specific depletions, but Asian-specific depletions. I've spent time in the Middle East, in North Africa. There are ways that I could speak about the way that women are depleted there that may be overlapping or differing from the depletions that I've experienced in the Western world. And so my point here is that if you are a mother on planet Earth in this moment in time, the world is not made for you to mother into the best possible outcome for you and your child. And so what that does is it sets up a depletion of giving. You can't give unconditionally if you're not tapped into a different source of ever-present, ever-flowing energy, ever-flowing love that you can give away and give away and give away and give away. So that's really the first obvious sign that if you were raised by a mother who didn't have herself connected to an undepleting source of love that she could fill herself up with first to the fullest and maximum capacity for that to live fully in her body and for her to vibrate in the frequency of unconditional love. And then the overflow flows into you and into any other children that she may have from this sense of effortless overflow, of opulence, of unconditionality, of ever-flowing abundant love. And if you had that situation in your life, I think you're probably good. You can click out of the podcast at this point in time. Your life is pretty different to everything I'm going to speak about going forward. So for the majority of us on this planet, that wasn't the case. And we didn't have a mother who was tapped in that way. And so we received an abundance of love when we were non-earthside, and we come earthside and we notice the immediate difference in the availability and conditionality of love. And it takes a while, but it leaves its mark. It doesn't happen in one day. It doesn't happen in months. It happens in a consistent, noticed, remarked upon way where the body receives less than the unconditional abundance of all love that fills every cell of this child's being. And so we start to make conclusions about that. We start to realize that maybe if we do something, or if we say something, or if certain events take place in certain particular ways, reactions occur where more love or more adoration or more consideration or more of something positive is felt and then given to us. And we get more full when that happens. And so that is how children learn to perform love and to perform for love. So we become the people that we think our mother needs us to become in order to get more love, more adoration, and more of whatever it is that we are craving inside of us, specifically to our particular energetic blueprint. And that is the first person that we learn performative love. We learn performative action for fulfillment of love, for fulfillment of needs, for fulfillment of particular positive reinforcement. And so the child's sole goal in life is to feel unconditional love, connection, and unity within the family unit and within the broader space that they occupy. Because that's our innate biological makeup. We are unity beings. We live in unity. We live in connection. We live in unconditionality of love. That is where we thrive. That is our innate state of being. When we come to this earth and we encounter, its drastic difference and divergence from that, we will do anything we possibly can to receive it. And not just receive it in drips and drabs, to receive it in the most consistent and abundant way that we possibly can. And if we work out very quickly, our mother likes it when we do this, we will change our behavior to servicing our needs to get the most love that we can. And a lot of the time that means being extremely obedient, compliant, complicit in any of the rules, obligations, etc. that she sets up. And we perform that character for the love that we need. And as time goes on, we don't quite realize that we've diverged from our natural state, from our truth, from our coherence. And we don't even realize that we're doing it as children. We just know that we're having our needs met. And our parents don't necessarily even know that we're doing it, because if we've been doing it from a very early age and it's been something that we've always done, some children have worked this out by 6 months old because the environment is not providing the unconditionality of the love. So for example, if you are somebody who is constantly on your phone, constantly distracted, always looking away from their child, always, even when you're walking with a pram and you're not talking to your child, you're talking on the phone, or you're talking, listening to a podcast or whatever it may be. That's disconnection that you yourself think is just, well, she's a baby. What do I need to do? I just want to take some time for me. And So we need to balance the time for us and the time for connection with child, because it doesn't need to be 24/7 because you will run yourself into the ground and go crazy. And it's important for you to have your own time as well. Concentrated amounts of time for baby in the same way that you could concentrate the amount of time for self is a really important antidote to making sure that your own child is filled up with love. And then what I like to suggest is whenever you're filling your baby up or your child up with that love, that attention, that adoration, that concentrated, one-on-one time, that the same amount of time, whether it's in that same moment or in a separate moment of time, is spent dedicating that to your own inner child and your own self at that age that your child was in when you're giving them love. So each day that your child grows up in front of you, so too does your inner child inside of you. And it's a beautiful mirror and a beautiful way to raise yourself alongside raising your children. And so let's now go into some deeper conversation around the mother wound and what this can really mean for you today as an adult who feels capped, who feels limited, who feels, well, I've done all the mother wound work. I've done so many workshops. I've done my journaling. I've done my inner child therapy. I've done my family constellations, past life regressions, hypnosis, all the things, right? All the things. And yet you still feel like there's this limit. And maybe it's a financial limit. You think I'm the most powerful, the most capable, the most intelligent, the most expert on my subject. I'm posting 3 times a week or 3 times a day. I'm doing, all the things. I'm showing up. I'm being visible. I'm being accountable. I'm working with my clients. I'm doing, all the things that I'm doing. Or maybe you're an employee and you're, doing all the hustle, all the grind. You're doing the work of 5 people in the same amount of time that you do your, normal 9 to 5. You literally cannot get promoted any more than what you are. You are at the top of your field. It is what it is, but you feel like there's something still holding you back. You know that you're meant for so much more greatness. It's this internal struggle that you feel with every single day. Why can't I break through? Why am I not here? You're doing all of the manifestation and the creation, but it's from survival, right? Like you want to get out of this survival mode. You want to end the energetic leaks that either repel money or relationships or dream clients or dream friends or the dream house. There's something that's always between you and the life that you know that you should be living. You don't want to be in hustle and grind. You don't want to be working from the masculine, burning yourself out, frying your nervous system. And so you stop that and you've pulled back from that. You've already felt the shift. You're more balanced. You're moving in your feminine. You haven't dropped your masculine. You've finally come to a sense of feeling of love and adoration, or at least respect for your parents, for, anyone that's ever wronged you or abused you. And just like, I've done all the things. What is it? Like, what can I do now? And so I was there. I was really grappling with, I don't know how much more healing I can do on this. I'm looping around in it. I keep coming back to the same points. And it's like, when I tap into that, it's like, that's not charged anymore. That's not triggering me anymore. I've moved away from that. I can feel a lot of calmness or zen in that particular aspect of me. And yet I'm still not living in the identity that I feel so deeply inside of me is my true self. And when I really tracked it all the way back to how much love did I get showered on me for doing literally nothing but existing, that was a bigger aha. And it wasn't intellectual. This time I could finally feel it. I could finally start to understand not only that lack of unconditionality in the love that should have just been mine no matter what. It was also a deep understanding at the same time that this wasn't anyone's fault. This wasn't my mother's fault, grandmother's fault, anyone's fault. It was just a realization point that in the unconditional love of the source of all that is, and we've all felt that in meditation, we've all felt that in, whether we're doing breath work or, whatever. You want to do ayahuasca and you feel that love and you're like, oh my God, that cracks me open. Like, you've heard every single person with a podcast who's spoken about that. Okay, great. It's 2026. We've all come into this meditative state of feeling this unconditional love. We don't get A+ for that because it's an isolated, discrete, and inconsistent reality that we live in, that we needed to externalize ourselves into an environment that wasn't normal everyday existence, waking up on a Tuesday morning. It was going into ceremony, going into ritual, going into ayahuasca, going into retreat, plant medicine, whatever else. It was getting yourself into this entranced state through breath work or yoga or whatever, so that you can feel it in a discrete and ending moment isn't enough, because now you almost know and feel and locate in your body what is actually missing from your life. And so for me, it was, how do I hold that in my body every day? How does the mitochondria of my being, the cellular structure of my body, how does the technology of my body, of my biotechnology system, hold more love? And when your body and your cells can operate in a frequency of unconditional pure love, well, let me tell you, first of all, you won't ever consult AI for any kind of answer to a question, right? Because those answers are now held within you. The water of your being holds more memory and more experience and intelligence than any AI ever could. But what we're experiencing right now on the planet, and why AI is so appealing to so many millions, I think billions at this point, is because the access point, the terminal that the user gets to log in and ask questions from, in AI, it's been set up for our mind and our fingers to type. Whereas our body technology, where we tap into our cellular memory, our water memory, the remembrance of who we are, and the coherence to the unconditional love that we know how to operate in, and that unlocks our superordinary abilities, is an interface that nobody has taught us how to use. And for good reason, right? Because it's really dangerous to have an entire population of people who can access their own inner wisdom and their own ability to manifest and create a new earth around and founded in unconditional love. And so the access point to all of that, to that internal state of being as your everyday, always on existence, your operating system, is this mother connection. It's this mother connection. One of the things that I felt really, really called to do after the birth of my daughter was to plant her placenta. I'm not going to go too deep into the process and into the ceremony, because that was gifted verbatim by particular elders that you can go and read and research and gain access to yourself. It's not my law to share. I don't take part as an elder in that community, in that star system. But in doing so, I released myself from the burden of being this person's mother. And that sounds really counterintuitive to living in unconditional love, right? But here's what happened. Here's what really changed for me. I went from being so burdened and responsible and totally 100% accountable for somebody's existence and somebody's receivership of unconditional pure love energy through a flawed mechanism of my human existence that was only ever going to give her less than unconditional pure love, because I am human and I am doing the best that I can and I love her unconditionally, but I don't always allow her to feel the fullness of that. But more importantly, even if I am a saint and even if I am perfect and I am always unconditionally loving, my body is so much smaller than the entirety of this planet that we live on, the entirety of the universe that we exist in. And so I wanted her to feel it in the quantum, to have that opportunity to know, feel, and vibrate that knowing in her cells, that every single decision that she operates from is from a place of, I am fully, wholly, and completely loved. That's my dream for her. That's my absolute dream for every child on the planet, for every person on the planet. And I think that over time, as we adjust our society's view of mothering, we can get there. And so as I planted her placenta and gave it back to the earth, gave this child back to Gaia, I remembered I vividly saw these recurring dreams that I had in the lead up to my birth. And actually I had them in the lead up to my conception as well. My daughter always presented herself to me as my sister or my friend. She was always very adamant that I not treat her as my child, my daughter, my lineage, but rather as the volunteer who birthed her to the planet so that we could walk together in this lifetime. And don't get me wrong, there was a lot of grief to move through on that, because when you want to be the mother of somebody and then that person doesn't let you, you have to go into a deep exploration into what is mother, what is that even mean? And so these dreams that she gave me was, as soon as you birth me, plant me in the earth. And sometimes I actually saw myself birthing outside and planting her body, wrapping her body in earth in like a little cocooned basket instead of wrapping her in a blanket. I didn't end up doing that, for obvious reasons. But what I did come to realize was that there's so little difference between the body of the baby and the placenta at some level of consciousness that digging her into the earth and giving her back to the earth was the placenta, was that cord, was that connection and that life force that the placenta gave to her. That was everything that kept her alive. And that capacity to plant that back into the earth and to give my child away. So not just plant the placenta and be gone with it, but to literally hand back responsibility and mothership to the ultimate mother, to Gaia, to whoever you want to call it, was really the part that unburdened me so much from my own path. And calling my own mother and releasing myself from her burdens and putting my life in equal measure into the hands of the ultimate mother helped me to distance myself enough from my mother and her humanness that I could finally see that none of the things that I was holding were ever her fault, were ever mine to carry on. And I could release the charge around those, resentments, or those parts of self that I felt held back by, so that I could just really release myself from those limitations. And so really it was I really looked into all the aspects of myself that felt betrayed, that felt I had no protection, that I was not protected in her unconditional love, that created self-doubt from not knowing and not feeling at all times a fullness of the love. And one of the things that I was able to do and have been able to do every day there since is when I feel those urges of I wasn't loved, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy enough, or I can't surpass my mother, or I can't do this because my mother will be upset, or I don't want to upset her, I don't want to bring this to her in a way that will damage her or blame her. I actually, because we planted the placenta very close to my house, I will go to the site, to the location. And even though it's my daughter's placenta, because I have so much unconditional love for her, it's a gateway access point into the unconditional love that I can then therefore feel for myself from this universal mother. And in that moment, when I feel that, I can start to say and name all of the aspects that I'm dealing with that result from a conditioned or a sense of conditioned love. And I can hand back all the parts of me that felt like I was betrayed or not protected or doubted, or where I felt worthless, or when I needed to become the emotional parentified child, or where I felt separation from my mother, where I felt those good girl obligations to perform for love, where I had to fix it all for my mother so that she would then be able to have more accessible love for me because she wouldn't be, worried about the things that she was doing. And so all of these aspects of me where I overperformed and over-delivered and over-fixed and became hyper capable and hyper independent. And then the problem on top of that is not just that, okay, now I get this positive reinforcement because my mother loves me more, or at least it feels like she does. What happens for these hyper independent, hyper capable women, over parentified women who grew up in this way and were positively reinforced in the household is that they go out to school and they're further reinforced in that behavior. Then they go to university, or they get a job, or they start a company. And every aspect of our society over time, over an entire lifetime, for many of us, it started when we were infants. We don't even know when it started. You have been more reinforced for the performance and the disembodied way that we have lived in service to other people and their needs and their requirements and what they are here to do and how we can service them in what they're here to do. And our whole life starts very, very much to look like somebody else's personal assistant, somebody else's, personal therapist, somebody else's coach, mentor, priest, nun, whatever it may be, where you are celebrated that you don't have needs, that you don't have desires, that you don't have power, that you don't have an opinion or a voice or anything else to do except service this person and their needs. Unraveling from that is so difficult because you have to unravel every aspect of who you think you are. And it is the greatest de-identification that you think is a death. It's like, who am I if I'm not helping everyone around me? Who am I if I close down my rescue farm for all of these strays that I've collected, for all of these people who are close to me in my life, who I'm literally propping up in every aspect? What is the relationship with this person if I am not doing something for them, if I am not servicing them? And that can be so scary and so lonely, because when you do that life audit and you realize that you have not a single person who is there in equal friendship, or most importantly, is there for you when things go wrong on your side, that's not friendship. That's just unpaid work. You have been hired as the coach or the executive assistant, and you've been working the job for years without payment or promotion. And when you leave those relationships and you detox from that and you move away from them and you have more energy and more vitality and more happiness and more capacity in your life than you ever have before, the weirdest grief surfaces, because you're not grieving those friendships. You're not grieving those relationships because you've realized they don't do anything. They're not even real. Let them go. And sometimes you can put them in the right equilibrium and salvage things. But what you're grieving is the fact that you've never lived your life as yourself. You've never lived who you are. You have lived a performance in service of other people's happiness, other people's comfort, and other people's capacity to feel at ease around you or to feel serviced by you. You are the ultimate good girl in every way, shape, and form. You've overperformed for your bosses and made them more money than they could have imagined. You've overperformed for your clients. You've overperformed for your family. You've overperformed for any relationship of intimate or friendship capacity. And when you turn it all around and you wonder who the hell is giving back to you, and you realize nobody, because you are a woman without need. That's the entire requirement to the good girl. You don't have any needs. You don't ruffle feathers. You don't argue. You don't talk back. You don't make big splashes. You service others. And what do you get in return? The illusion of love. And the part that you're grieving is that you did all of that and lost yourself, and yet you still didn't get the love that you were promised. It was still conditional. It was still mediocre. It was still so far from the ultimate truth that your body knows that the question is, why did I do any of it? And so handing your life and your mothering over to this universal mother, over to this part of you that knows that unconditional love exists and can exist for you and is there for you, can really start to break these cellular patterns in your body and actually really decode and reprogram your identity. That's the repatterning and the rapid repatterning of sitting in a space where you feel this unconditional love. And you feel it not only coming from one individual person, but from the entire universe and all that is. And in that moment, you repattern and you hand it all, you release. I'm releasing the abandonment. I'm releasing that I wasn't protected. I'm releasing the conditionality of the love that I have known. I am releasing the suffering as identity. I'm releasing losing myself in men, in mothers, in others. I am releasing not knowing who I am. I am releasing performing for scraps. I am releasing the emotional identity wound that I have. I am releasing servicing and fixing all these people around me. I am releasing success as a requirement to worth. I am releasing worth as a requirement to love. I am releasing all aspects of me that are in service of others, in service of the good girl, in service of silence. I will no longer silence myself. Help me find my voice. Help me find my power. Help me find my place. Help me find my identity. Help me find my truth and coherence to nature and to unconditional love. And that will shift. Sometimes it can shift in an entire moment. And everything will rewrite within you. And you'll feel the water within you, the waters of your being, releasing the remembering and the recoding to quantum leap your reality into a dimension where that is true, completely and wholly. And especially if you don't negate everything that you just said and did, it can happen very quickly and it can happen very easily. There's the other side where that doesn't, and it takes consistency and persistence and practice and effort to continue to allow a new reality to exist for you. At least for me, and the way that it has unfolded for me is that it has really helped me to release a lot of resentment, feelings of betrayal, hatred, or grief and sadness around my actual physical mother and my relationship, which sometimes takes longer to let go of and unpack, because there is a sense as well that just because you can find the unconditional love of a universal mother, the grief of having an expectation on a physical human might take longer. And so that was for me something I needed to move through and work through and accept day by day. And the most important part was breaking the habits of taking on the responsibility for things that were not my responsibilities, for rushing in and fixing things that were easy for me to fix, but not mine to fix. And you have to sort of join a 21-day detox over Fixes Anonymous, whatever it is. And in fact, that's actually a really good idea, because there are plenty of overfixes in this world, and we definitely need an anonymous program, or whatever they call them. So that's really, for me, one of the biggest journeys that I've been on in shifting away from healing the mother wound as a negative thing of all the toxic or all the problematic things that your mother did to you. Because if you're in that spiral of this person did this to me, you're looping in victim. You're looping in that which cannot be changed from the same energy. And that's really the most important aspect of this, is elevating the perspective, but also the codes in which your body can actually hold into a higher container for unconditional love. It is a practice. It is a journey. Be kind and reach out if you need any more help, because we shouldn't have to do this alone.